drawing and drawing and drawing all day long, because it's going to have a negative effect when you lose, and that has created imbalance. And I like that about this, as this game about to start, has started, in fact.
Game 3
That's
in
right.
the rapid chess match between Magnus and Ding.
We're seeing another Ruy Lopez.
A repeat.
And no Berlin.
And after bishop d2, d3 was Magnus's choice in their first game. It's also his choice in game 3, as the players are repeating their exact line. And again, in match play, when you're black, you come to the match and say, okay, if my opponent plays e4, this is my main defense. And until you break me down, I'm not backing away. I'm going to maintain my main defense, and that's what we're seeing in this match as it unfolds. And I'm just looking at b1 to c2 by the world champion as he aimed to win back his a4 pawn. He couldn't capture it right away because this pawn on d3 was hanging, so first he had to push the bishop away from b5. He won back his pawn, and then the structure is that white structure is a lot nicer with this a6 pawn kind of hanging out there. Okay, a5, and after a lot of more moves, a big-time maneuvering game going on between these two players. They've got this position. I'm going to give white a little bit of a pull, but all to play for. And Jennifer, we have a very special guest in our studio.
We actually have a special analyst to bring you all of the cutting edge variation.
Actually, let's get right into it. Maurice, where do we stand in that game between Magnus and Ding?
Excitement now in this game as the positional build-up niceties came basically to a peak for white, and he decided he needed to go for something. And in chess, I tell my students all the time, chess is about the pawn breaks you have. You have to pay attention to your critical pawn breaks in the position. And Magnus, just a couple of moves ago, he had put pieces on what seemed to him to be maximal squares, and then he decided he needed a pawn break, and he played it. Now you see the move king h1, but let us first take a look just a couple of moves ago, as in this position, or just one move actually before this one, he decided it was time to play f4, the main pawn break in the position. Everything else has been controlled by black, but this one is the one he can play and try to put some pressure on his e-pawn, try to open up the game a bit. Black played queen to g6, and now the move king to h1, super solid on this side. So the tension is building and building. It looks as though it's white who's in the driver's seat as far as what can be done. But don't count out this great position of these knights. d4 is controlled, b4 is controlled, the protection on this pawn on a5. These rooks don't look like they're going anywhere special anytime soon. It looks like black's position should be okay. It's not clear that Magnus has anything concrete, but he'll be cooking. As you know, Magnus is a maestro chef at the chessboard, and he'll be looking for some ideas. But Ding Liren has proven himself to be quite capable in the first two games so far.
And
after that move, f4 and king h1, you were saying this, white has this great knight posted up on the center square in the middle of the board, knight d5. Well, I think it's time for black to post up a knight in the center as well. And I'm just thinking, okay, let's do a move like knight on c6 to d4. I'm offering this pawn on a5 as a kind of a gambit. You know, bishop takes, rook takes, pawn takes. And I was thinking that this rook might come over to the g file, offering Ding Liren some attacking chances himself, as he has the opportunity of playing e5 takes f4 and opening up the position on the board. That position is double-edged. All results are possible.
Well, he played knight b4.
He played knight
He played knight b4, which...
I knew the knight had to go. I just didn't know that it was going to go to b4 and not d4. Knight b4 was his choice.
The Indians much preferred your move, knight d4, by the way, much preferred, and think that this move is a mistake. But bishop takes b4 was played by Magnus, and then c takes b4. And here the Indians like f takes on e5. Instead, he played knight f3 and allowed this exchange, and now the rook, wrong square, the rook went to g7 and prevents the idea of a rook to g2. Right. And this position, the Indians don't think of that special for white, excuse me. For white, the small nuance. The knight apparently should have gone to d4. So we're able to look at this game a little bit closer with some engines to try to confirm some of our assessments. And it looks as though black is fine here. But trying to look at these other blitz games with engines, next to impossible.
World champions.
Absolutely.
Dominant looking knight on e5. Yes, look at what happened with this knight. Remember earlier there was
two knights for both sides. It looks like this bishop on d8 is a good block.
Well, earlier there was a pawn on d6, or a knight on f3 wasn't, and there was a pawns on d6 and h6, or a knight on f3 was not super effective, right? Mm-hmm. But a lot has changed.
Kudos to Magnus. This was the critical moment in the game, by the way. When Magnus played the move queen to d3 right here, it was important that Liren realized what the problem was and what the threat was. And it's not obvious what the threat is, in fact. He decided to make a passive move, bishop back to d8. It does deal with some kind of possible knight g5 check and queen h3 danger, which he could have defended another way. But what did this move do? It weakened the e5 square, and Magnus immediately pounced with c5. Positional advantage here with this move, getting this square e5 for his knight. And it's not so easy to capture this because now knight e5, and he's getting the same kind of setup, and he's just rushing at black in this position with this dominant knight on e5. Instead, after c5, he played the move rook to e4, and that caused Magnus to be able to just grab this pawn. And after rook takes knight e5, and he gets the square for the knight anyway. A nice pawn break with c5, getting the e5 square, and now Liren is in some trouble as Magnus's pieces are expanding, and it's not easy to see how black can get anything at all against these forces.
Queen g3 is in the air. That's
and queen g3 are more attacking moves as well.
Well, what about queen d5? I'm still a little bit confused by this unbalanced position. Queen d5 for Liren. You can't go queen g3. I got rook f1, rook on
queen
f1.
d5, queen a6 was played instantly, guarding the f1 square, guarding his pawn, and also preparing slight threat along the back, along the rank.
Oh, that's a good one.
Tickle. Big time move by Magnus. And
bishop
now
to g4.
Liren is in trouble as he played bishop to b6, trying to deflect the queen and guarding the a7 square, and Magnus instantly seeing the move knight to d7, now setting up knight f6.
Whoa.
Mate in 2, and the bishop is hanging. Magnus, wow, showing his skills.
As well as knight f8.
So bishop d8 stopping knight f6 is going to allow knight f8. Ooh, that's a nasty
Knight
one.
f8 followed by knight g6, folled by a rook. Queen dropping
f7
back to f7.
But that seems to leave the bishop hanging high and dry on the b6 square.
You still can't move the queen away from the f1 square.
No.
Queen takes is a blunder, but knight takes seems as though it should do the job, although it displaces his piece momentarily.
I don't see the counterplay.
Knight takes b6, rook takes d4, but then the queen can come back home.
Something like queen f1, queen a8. Just covering.
But wait a minute. If you can win, if rook takes, play this, knight takes b6, rook takes d4. If you can, where will he put his queen? If he puts his queen to e2, you lose your d6 pawn.
Right.
You're still up a piece though.
Exactly.
Piece for 2 pawns.
And this should be enough actually for white.
Really should.
Yes.
If we trade rooks, your knight is just so strong.
Yeah. You mean back here you could toss in a check. Oops.
But instead of taking it, yeah.
What has happened after knight d7, queen f7, stopping
Magnus
the
is
knight
thinking.
checks?
He's still thinking.
Magnus is
See if
thinking.
there's any other moves here. Trying to.
Well, the one thing you don't want to do is blunder your king. Queen takes b6 would allow a checkmate in 2. Something which was dreadfully seen.
And he did not take it. He played queen to c4, it looks like,
Whoa.
Yasser.
Really? How intriguing.
Well, because remember, after queen takes c4, there's a knight f6 and rook g8 mate.
And we have seen queen take c4, by the way.
Rook g8 was not mate.
Oh, right, because of the queen. Right,
guarding.
of course. Yeah.
But this
takes
line,
on c.
Whoops,
he hasn't taken on c4, but he's played knight to f8.
but he has to settle for a draw now. He missed the win.
And
he missed the win and has to settle
agreed.
for a draw. He's returned the favor.
What
he
happened?
thinks he didn't realize he didn't realize the
That
mistake.
knight F6
Yeah, knight F6,
and
there's no
rook
rook
G8
G8 mate.
is not
yeah.
mate.
He hallucinated that as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, just to help our audience here.
Yeah, that's what
For
I hallucinated.
Sure, Magnus, when he played the move queen c4, for sure, he thought, oh, I know what I'm going to do is I'm
Yeah.
just going to checkmate you if you take my queen. Isn't that sweet? Except he suddenly became aware of the fact G8 was protected. So that was why he went knight F8 check and ended up making a perpetual and offering
Brutal.
a draw.
By the way-
because what happened if he had just taken the queen, rook takes d4, and all the pawns are coming off the board, right? Or
No,
you
no,
can't
worse.
take it, bishop,
Worse than
rook
that.
f1 first.
Yeah.
Worse than that. Rook
and then
F1,
rook g1 and bishop.
Bishop takes
and then
D4.
bishop takes d4.
The knight would have been on d7 in that line.
On F8. I think they're laughing because
And I
I
don't
think
D7
both
on
of them are realizing they bluffed one another there. I mean, there was some bluffing going on when he played this move, Queen F7, and
let's
just
see
offered to the bishop.
Let's see the end of that game, yes.
Sure.
Knight takes b6 is the
Was
correct
winning.
move, but this move here,
So queen
Queen
c4,
C4.
a hallucination that after queen c4 there would be this checkmate in 2. Trying to deflect the queen, unfortunately. You have to actually capture it first to be able to make that checkmate.
but Magnus played queen c4, knight f8 so quickly. It's hard to imagine that he
Yeah, that
didn't
is
see
weird.
this. He didn't stop
But he
and
kind
go,
of
oh
pointed,
no.
He pointed to the queen after the game. That's why I was confused.
Maybe he
Didn't you
forgot rook F1.
And Wesley So joining us
I feel
just
like he
chimed
played-
in with